This video is going to walk us through graphing basic rational functions. These are the 4 steps that I'm going to follow in this video. I'm going to start by finding vertical and horizontal asymptotes in step 1 and step 2. And step 3, I'm going to make a small XY table to plot some points. And then I will connect those points with a smooth curve, or 2 smooth curves, in step 4 for my final graph. So let's go ahead and look at our example. So we have the equation y equals 1 over the quantity x minus 2 plus 3. So to start with, we are going to set the denominator of our fraction equal to 0, and that will tell us our excluded values or restrictions. They're called both. And it'll also give us the equation of our first asymptote. So whatever is in the denominator, we're going to set equal to 0. So in this case, that's x minus 2. And if we add 2 to both sides, we can see that our excluded value is that x cannot equal 2. If we tried to plug in 2, we would try to have a denominator of 0 with our fraction there, and we can't do that. So if I go to the 2 on the x-axis and then sketch in that vertical line, that is our asymptote. Remember, asymptotes are generally boundaries for our graph, right? These are lines that we can get very, very close to, but we can't actually touch on our graph. To find our horizontal asymptote, in this example, we're looking at where the y-intercept is, or where our what would happen if this fraction piece was not here. We would just have the constant afterwards, the plus 3. So that is our horizontal asymptote, is plus 3. So if I go to 3 on my y-axis and sketch in the horizontal line, there's my second asymptote. So those are the only 2 asymptotes for this specific example. More complicated equations would have more asymptotes, but these are our only 2. So now we're going to make a small XY table. And for my XY table, I have to keep in mind what I did in step 1 and step 2. So in step 1, I said I can't plug in 2 for x. So what I'm going to do on my XY table is choose values that are above and below 2. Below 2, I would have like 0 and 1. And above 2, I could plug in numbers like 3 and 4. So I just choose a couple of points on either side of my asymptote, so I have a general idea about what my graph will look like. So if I plug in those values, if I plug in 0, I'll end up with negative 1/2 plus 3, which would be 2.5. If I plug in 1, I would have negative 1 plus 3, which is 2. Then going above 2, if I were to plug in 3, I'd have 1 plus 3, which is 4. And if I plug in 4, I would have 1/2 plus 3, or 3.5. So let's plot these points and see what we have here. So I'm going to plot the point 0, 2.5, which is just underneath my red line there on the y-axis. If I plot 1, 2, it would be that point right there. And if I plot 3, 4, that would be on the other side of that blue line there. So 3, 4 would be here, and 4, 3.5 is next to it. So since we know that this is a rational function, by looking at it, we see that the x is in a fraction in the denominator. We expect to have this hyperbola graph. So we should recognize that we are going to have 2 small curves that look like this. So I'm getting really, really close to the red and blue lines, our asymptotes, but I'm not actually touching them. I'm connecting the dots with smooth curves, and I'm putting arrows on the end because these lines go on forever. Both of those parts of our curve will go on forever. So that's the basic rational function and the steps that we use to graph it.